Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Derek,
Godzuki,
and Sean.
Hello.
And on this episode, we'll be discussing Godzilla, King of the Monsters, the new 2019 Godzilla film, where isn't it the biggest that Godzilla's ever been on film?
Yes. Because it's funny because when he first started off, I guess as time's went on, they've had to make him bigger because buildings have gotten larger. But I think when he first started, he was only 100 foot tall or something.
I think it was 150 because I just watched I think it was 150 feet. Yeah. I mean, maybe the translation was wrong because I just watched the original this week also.
Yeah. Because I've seen all the size charts that show him over the years, and then in the 2014 Godzilla, he got significantly bigger, and then this one he's even bigger than then.
Yeah. Well, you did think about too.
It's going to be the same thing with King Kong too. The original King Kong took him forever to scale a building.
Yeah.
And now they're going to make it where he's presumably the same size as Godzilla.
So now he just steps up on the building. He's like, I want it on the top.
And he just picks it up and uses it as a spear.
It's a shank.
Yeah, but we'll start the discussion now without full spoilers and have full spoilers till at the end. Now, once again, this is a movie where Godzilla and other creatures fight, and I would say that is the main attraction to the film that can't be spoiled.
Yeah, that's why you watch Godzilla.
Well, what's funny, obviously you don't want to be spoiled on some of the stuff that happens, even though this is the most basic. Again, it's it's like watching a WWE match, But granted, the storyline's there too. But when I went to the theaters, I went really late as far as I just had some time in the day and I was waiting on some emails back and I had nothing to do. So I was like, I'm going to go right now. I ran to the theater, got popcorn. Guy said, okay, it's 3 to the left. Well, the new theater has an X3 screening and a theater 3 and then an X3. Yeah. I went into theater 3 and I went in halfway through the movie and they said a specific line about Godzilla and I walked out and I'm like, oh wait, yeah, that's just apparently that happens an hour into the movie and I just figured out I just know what happens now. So then I had to go to my other screening room. Thankfully it was Godzilla and it wasn't something, some thriller where
it wasn't a movie where that just destroyed everything and made it useless to watch.
But I still had it in the back of my mind. But yeah, it was fine.
You walk into Sixth Sense, it's you are dead people, Bruce Willis.
But I would have been glad not to know that. So that's on my mind. I was going to think, spoilers aren't that big on this one. But yeah, maybe just hold off. And we can mainly talk about, I guess, just the broad stuff and some of the fights.
Well, what about a movie that is mostly CG and the fights, for the monsters, I thought for the most part looked really impressive and good. I didn't come out of him man, that looked kind of cheesy. All the action in it, as far as being just a pure CG movie, it looked awesome. I
think that the creature designs looked great.
Yes,
and they redesigned them for the modern era and kept the core of what made them look like what they were, but didn't make it go too over designed something like the Michael Bay Transformers films.
Yeah.
And it didn't make them kind of rubbery or really fake looking like some CGI does. So I thought the CGI was well done. I just thought we didn't see enough of the monsters.
Yeah, I would
so you didn't think we saw enough of them?
Because it just reminded me when you watch the old Toho Godzilla films, and you're like, okay, get the freaking little women dancing thing. Get this off. Let's see the monsters. Yeah. And it felt like they've just rehashed that formula for the modern age.
Did you watch the 2014 one?
So I think I'd only watched bits and pieces of it on HBO in the past years.
That one even shows them less,
And I did not have enough time to watch that before watching this one.
I watched that one before seeing it the night before, and I really liked it. I really liked the 2014 one. It's not a perfect film or anything.
Let me ask you this. Do you even need to have watched that before watching? Because I
like some. Yes, I like some of the build. I would recommend it only because I like some of the build up, something. And this is, Godzilla, some stuff he can do, and I knew stuff I knew his powers, how he can, shoot out whatever he shoots out, the energy,
radiation.
But one thing that was awesome in that first one, it is a different kind of theme. Of course, that one does lean on the nuclear stuff a lot. The whole thing of that is there's a creature going and consuming nuclear power.
Yeah.
So that's why it's on a rampage, because it's feeding basically, and Godzilla's going after it. But one thing I love through the whole thing of kind of watching this play out in the film is at the end we get the buildup of kind of the fight, and and Godzilla's kind of like down at some point, and then all of a sudden you see him start to power up, you know, all the blades on his back and stuff, and like that was an awesome moment in the movie. Like it started powering up, and you hear the music and that sound effect they use. It's so awesome, and it was like, holy shit, like that's an awesome moment. Like, and I think the buildup was really good. Where this, it's just all out. We're just going. You know what I mean? It's a different type of film, but I do like the 2014 one. You know, the lead, he is fine. He's not as strong as the ones in these, even though these are just kind of there sometimes. But I still, I like 2014. I like the tone of it, the way it's handled. It's a different feel than this one. It may be weird watching this one and then going back just because the lid's already been blown off on the monster fights. You know what I mean?
But I think the weird thing to me is, like, I've not watched 2014, but the lead stars from 14 are not in this.
Yeah.
So from what I understood is the lead actors in this one weren't in the previous movie, but you did have some crossover characters.
Yeah, Ken Watanabe and Sally Hawkins.
Yeah.
They were both, they're kind of the through line.
Yeah.
And I like their characters a lot, and I was hoping to see them.
It's just really like weird that they.
Well, because the first film had Aaron Taylor Johnson, who was Quicksilver in the MCU and Kick-Ass, Elizabeth Olsen, and Bryan Cranston. And those were the leads from the first one. So, like I said, I vaguely remember seeing parts of the first one. I did not rewatch it. But too, what's funny is I remember the marketing campaign for the first Godzilla, like the trailers that came out. The initial trailers only really hinted that it was Godzilla, and then like it's titled Godzilla, and you're like, oh, okay. So because it showed like military troops I
love that
doing like a halo jump and all this stuff, and then it's like at the end you're like, oh, it's Godzilla. But when the movie's called Godzilla, it's interesting to take the approach of like hiding the fact that it's Godzilla in the trailer, so that the excitement is over the course of a 2-minute trailer. You're like, oh man, it's Godzilla.
Yeah, but also too, you know, if you remember the 98 Godzilla film, they didn't show the monster. That was a whole marketing campaign where for any commercials, you never saw the monster. Yeah. You didn't see it until you went to see the film. You know, I think from what I remember, they hid him. You never saw what he looked like or anything.
It was her. Yes, her. She had eggs.
Yeah. I mean, now, it's funny because I'm glad you brought up the Matthew Broderick Godzilla. It's funny because that one was just, I've not rewatched it in so long, but that one to me felt more like a Jurassic Park type movie, and this one does.
I mean, because
even the design, I think, of the 98 one was more dinosaurish.
So this iteration of Godzilla is very much, you know, more paying reference to its origins from Japan and how the character played out and being related to nuclear testing and there being, you know, other monsters and stuff like that. So it played out much closer to, like, you know, paid more homage and was more in line with that, as opposed to the 90s Godzilla felt like the US version of stuff that where you have to take like the core of what it is and then rejigger it and change everything around so that it barely resembles what it was based on.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Godzilla being not that large, because the Godzilla from the 90s Matthew Broderick film compared to this Godzilla would be like, what, a quarter of its height?
Yeah. Like I said, to me, it felt more like, and I don't know if this because Jurassic Park was so big at that point.
I think it probably was.
It definitely is because they had the baby Godzillas, basically. You know what I mean? And it was like, that was like the raptors chasing.
Yeah. And it's just funny because you go back and you watch that one. I'll revisit it sometime. But the only thing I remember the most out of it is
Taco Bell.
No. 3D Doritos, because there was an entire commercial.
No, don't you remember? I remember having the little
Taco Bell, little chihuahua.
We had some of the little plush chihuahuas where it's like, here, lizard. Which
do they still have them?
When that movie came out, I liked it. You know, I liked it. Yeah. And it was way different. And I recently bought it because it was like $5 for the 4K version on Vudu, because I bought like 4 different Godzilla things. Because I'm gonna watch that again. It's dumb. I know what it is this time.
It's just funny that Matthew Broderick was, of all people, it's like him.
He's like, I'm wide-eyed, I'm running around.
It was just funny because what I remember, it was more just felt like a Jurassic Park, Armageddon, but there was like a certain formula in the 90s, whereas this one's a little bit different because this one plays, I guess, more gritty. I didn't see 2014, but from 2014, it to me also felt more like grounded and gritty. Yeah. And with this one, like the lead guy... You know, and even Vera, however you say her name,
Vera Farmiga.
I just found them to be really weak, and it's not that I don't particularly care for the lead on this. I just find him an
Godzilla King of the Monsters. So your main characters are Kyle Chandler, Vera Farmiga, Millie Bobby Brown, You have like Charles Dance in there as well, and you have Thomas Middleditch and Ken Watanabe, and so you have a lot of different characters, and so the barest of bare plot thread elements, we'll discuss now without spoiling it. So basically, Vera Farmiga and Kyle Chandler's family, they lost a child. They had 2 kids. They had a girl and a boy. And then the girl in I guess the quote-unquote current day of the world was played by Millie Bobby Brown. But so they lost one of their children, their young boy, during the events of Godzilla 2014. And then that caused a rift in their family where they were separated. So it's where Kyle Chandler is off photographing wolves and tracking and doing.
He's like a National Geographic type.
He could just be a YouTuber, not getting paid like us.
Yeah, or I just assume that he's like somebody works for.
He's like these wolves are trash. 1 out of 10. But yeah, so you have that, and then Vera Farmiga and Millie Bobby Brown. She's working in a Monarch base. So even if you've seen Kong Skull Island and watched the post credits teasers, they have the Monarch stuff. So they've had like essentially a group that goes after the monsters or the large creatures over a long period of time.
And Monarch, I believe, was in the original Godzilla 2014.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So that was what so in this one, you even hear references to Skull Island, which
they drop plenty of them. They don't even hide them. It's like multiple times Skull Island, and they even say Kong at some point, don't they?
Yeah, I think
and it's pretty much because without even this isn't a spoiler. So so this movie, King of the Monsters, directed by Michael Donnery, who had done Trick or Treat and Krampus, and is a screenwriter that had worked on stuff like the X-Men series, I think, and some other films.
Here we go. X-Men.
So. The next movie with Godzilla in it is going to be Godzilla vs. King Kong, directed by Adam Wingard, who had directed You're Next and The Guest, and then Blair Witch and Death Note. So
we can talk about more theories about what we think that might be after the spoilers, because I think there might be a little bit more to it than just Godzilla versus King Kong.
Yeah, it'll probably be because I remember. So
let's wait because so
the Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Like the thing is, like with these movies, and there's a certain formula, and like I'm gonna use Jurassic Park as a template because it's relative because they've been out recently. Like this movie, the Kyle Chandler, whatever his name is, whatever his character's name in the movie was, kind of fits into. He's not ex-military, I don't think, but. He's like your animal tracker. So
he was a former scientist. At least him and
it falls into
his wife, Dr. Russell.
They had developed a device because the wife is Emma and the kid is Maddie, is what I remember because he referenced them by name a lot. Yeah. But they had developed a device called the Orca, which was initially a device developed to used, I guess, to do like sonar to warn whales not to get close to the shoreline. So they wouldn't then die or, get beached or whatever. So they took a device that was initially developed to, warn whales away from getting too close to the shoreline, and then adapted it to work with, Godzilla and the other Titans is what they call them. And then be able to, make them be calmer or things like that. So they have this device, and that's kind of the plot MacGuffin, is everybody wants the Orca because you can use it to calm down or anger or whatever the Titans.
Almost like a control mechanism. It's not one-to-one, but at least, you can cause destruction or you can prevent it with it.
Yeah.
Because, at the beginning of the movie, they have Mothra who's just hatching out of an egg, and then they use the Orca device to calm down Mothra. Yeah, so we'll hold the spoilers to discuss which other creatures, because that's literally in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah,
that's
which I didn't even know, the plot. So that's kind of the premise, and of course, with a device like this,
and then there are
human characters that want it.
There's an eco-terrorist group that's ran by Charles Dance that's trying to get the device, and then you have Monarch who's trying to keep the device.
Do we want to get into the motives? that's kind of about the theme of the film, but I don't know. I think maybe.
The
whole goal of the eco-terrorist is basically, which I think is very relevant. I don't know if I talked about this in the podcast, but I was like, man, there's going to be plenty of films that's going to lean on the global warming thing. You know what I mean? As a theme of movies.
Even a TV series such as Chernobyl that's been out recently, because this is kind of nuclear with everything going on there. And like their premise was the destruction. You bring these animals out when whatever they destroy, such as like Godzilla, because of the radiation, life comes back.
Yes. So they believe that we are destroying the world. Humans are destroying it, which is obviously a hot topic right now. Did you guys haven't seen? Oh my gosh, what is the movie with Ethan Hawke?
I know what you're talking about. It's where he's the priest.
Paul Schrader.
Yeah.
Oh, I've not seen that.
What is that movie called? Anyway, kind of minor spoilers. That's the theme of that film. That's what that is about, like reconciling with like what we're doing to the environment. It is so good, guys. It's really good. I don't know why I can't think of the name of that movie, but anyway, so that is the theme of this.
First Reform.
Yes, First Reform. So, I mean, I love them tackling that idea, because the original was about the use of nuclear weapons and stuff. And obviously coming from, Japanese filmmakers, only like less than 20 years
After
No,
Atomic
it was
Bomb.
like 10 because it came out. The first Godzilla was in 54.
Was it 54? Okay, yeah, you know what I mean.
So it
it's
wasn't even. It was
in the
like
wake
9.
of
that obviously.
World War
So
II.
now it's a new using these creatures as a new spin on a very relevant topic that could lead to the destruction of the world. You know what I mean? I love that part of it.
Well, yeah, and then
but it's very blanketed. You know what I mean? It's very
it's
easy.
pretty.
But I love the debate of that, but the debate in this film is handled so poorly and like just sloppy. But it's. You know what? I'm okay with it in this film because it's not like it's people sitting in a room talking the whole time. We also have these monsters fighting. So at least they try to find a good end with this that kind of fit the lineage of Godzilla.
Well, and two, the other thing that they tried to show was in San Francisco in the wake of the Godzilla versus other Titan fight from 2014, that it had grown a lot of vegetation and greenery and basically that... what was they comparing it to? Like if the Titans wipe somewhere out,
It'd kind of be like Chernobyl.
It flourishes and grows back as if, like they talked about how a forest fire will then revigorate the soil to grow back, in the future. So the idea is, the eco-terrorists,
humans.
the eco-terrorists are basically like, oh, if a Titan goes in and levels a place, then it returns the natural order and makes it grow back with nature, and then it's repopulated with animals.
They almost think we're saving the Earth, but they are terrorists, so they are fine at the cost of many.
And I would say that their group is very underdeveloped. You don't like all you get is like a few like sly looks from Charles Dance's character, and you don't really get a ton of input into what their worldview is.
Now, how much do each of y'all individually know about the different monsters in that universe? Like very little,
not a lot. Yeah, I watched them when I was a kid. They would come on TV, and I watched the hell out of them.
See, I think
buy
when we were
action figures, like from the early '90s.
I remember them.
But other than that, I kind
Godzilla.
of dropped off after the '98 one, and I never watched. Like I was excited for Godzilla 2000, just never watched it. I was excited for 2014, and then I heard some kind of and I never watched it. I just for some reason, kind of, I don't know if I was afraid to go back to it and like, oh, it's just not going to be that good as I remember. But after jumping back in, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like back in.
Oh
now.
yeah.
I think what I get out of the Godzilla the most is like there's like you have Pacific Rim and there's a like even crap the movies I hate, Cloverfield. Like you have movies that have how you say kaiju's.
Yeah,
you have those different types of movies, but then you go watch Godzilla and it's like just being Godzilla and in that universe and having those characters. I just feel like they're 100% better. Not to say that
Pacific Rim is really good,
but I think what makes that less interesting to me is obviously the sequel show that because nobody watches. Like when you don't have like a big, when you just have nameless monsters and you're trying to sell it on the characters themselves, it's probably not as interesting.
Well, because like
the concept of Pacific Rim is
the concept
so
was good, but then the sequel
I didn't see the sequel because Del Toro didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He didn't direct it, and I heard it wasn't that good. I'll watch it one day, but I just think there's so many things that work so good about Pacific Rim that this film falters on. On some regards, but I do like that they try to make this a team up movie. Too with a cast of characters. I liked that.
This one kind of felt like because with Monarch, it kind of felt like Shield a little bit from the, especially in Winter Soldier because you had the big flying,
Which is funny, you talked about the original Godzilla kind of being like Jurassic Park. Well, they do the Avengers type thing in this. You know what I mean? It's
Well, like other things, I would say that the movie. So like when you actually see the monster fights. Because I was trying to break it down. There's probably like 20 minutes, 25 minutes of the actual monsters on screen fighting.
I say there's probably more than that. There is.
I'm not talking about in a storm cloud far away where you don't actually see anything. I'm talking about like legit fighting on screen. It's probably about like 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
I feel like it's more than that. It might not be, but it seemed like it was more.
Because a lot of it, the way they shot it, you would shoot it from the scale or the perspective of the human characters. So you're not seeing a lot of it. But I thought it was like this weird thing where they, at the same time, were from the perspective of human characters in some of the instances, but not making it feel appropriately scaled. Like you didn't feel the scale of the size of the creatures in comparison to the humans, the way they shot it. I don't know, it's kind of weird to me.
I think if you were so close to them, though, it would just be like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's even hard to get perspective if they were like right next to him just because they are so big.
Well, and two, it may have been like trying to keep the budget down, not having them in the middle of a New York type city. But I mean,
they're saving that for King Kong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They can't just spoiler. They don't destroy New York in this.
Yeah,
it just feels like
another city.
It just feels like you don't get the scale necessarily of the Titans next to landmarks or things where you would get a relative size because the humans, if you see them, are never. I mean, because they would be like little ants.
Yeah, I think that's why. I think it's just hard to show. But
it was nice though that this movie essentially took place in the Midwest for the final fight scene instead
Took
of
place in Boston.
I thought, man, I was in Chicago
because they were in.
No,
never mind.
Stadium,
Fenway Park.
Yeah. I don't know why I thought they said Wrigley. I thought it was Chicago the entire time. I don't know what it was. I just thought Chicago. Okay, well, anyway, it didn't take place in New York, and it didn't take place in New York or California. So that's a win because that's usually where every single thing any Hollywood movie ever does ever happens.
You know, for the third one,
Atlanta.
The third one could be about I don't know abortion. They could go out to Georgia and just step on Atlanta.
When you try to think about it, it's like
the Atlanta film industry, Godzilla just steps on it.
Well, I guess that tells me how much I paid attention to the movie because I really thought it was Chicago.
It was definitely Boston. They mentioned it several times.
I straight up thought it was
that's
Chicago.
Where they lived and everything originally. But so you mentioned earlier, William,
did they kill Tom Brady in this?
No.
How you didn't think there was enough, monsters on screen. Again, like I said, you may be spoiled if you go back to the original Godzilla 2014 because there seems to be less in that one. But,
yeah, I'd heard that.
But it's there was enough though. I actually was surprised how much there was because I had heard that too, and I thought, if the characters aren't that good, but I like the story of that. And that one they even don't pull out as much as this one does to kind of show like a wide aerial shot,
I think,
but the thing about showing the monsters, I thought when I was watching this, there was a scene where Millie Bobby Brown's just kind of running around and we're cutting between her and the monsters. And I thought like, I want to see more of the monsters. It was after like a little extended fight scene between them that we got to watch for, maybe like a minute or two. And I got thinking, well, the only thing though is, did they pace it exactly perfectly? Because you watch some films, like say Transformers or something. I know it's hard to work it out, but when you see two creatures fighting for so long, would it start to get boring? You know what I mean? Like that's what I was wondering. Did they pace this perfectly? Where even though I want maybe a little bit more monsters, do I actually want that? Would have got boring in the film if we didn't constantly cut betwing the human story and stuff.
Because I think
that's a big risk.
The monsters don't have any dialogue, and you can't do like I talked about the scene a lot, but in Atomic Blonde they had that hallway fight. Yeah. That's interesting because you can understand that more.
Yeah.
When you have these big monsters fighting, there's only so much they can do.
Yeah. Well, and I think they do some cool stuff with them.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And so like, I do agree that if you just show a big CGI battle that lasts far too long, it's essentially becoming a video game cutscene.
But now,
and
all the critics that trash this movie's big complaint was there was too much monsters in it.
See,
it's funny, you know what I mean?
Like your complaint is there wasn't enough.
Okay,
but
so
when you look at the critics,
No,
I'm not saying anything. It's just funny that when you say you're not wrong, but when the critics come out like, well, it's too much.
Well, I was going to reframe
creature movie.
What my critiques would be that the story and the human side of it didn't feel super strong, and I wasn't super invested in the motivations of some
much
characters.
Of it was unearned completely.
Oh,
It was
yeah,
just
there was
like-
Because characters make these big turns, and you're like, there was no lead up or build up to
flop
this.
more than a fish on dry land. The characters were just
Well,
And
here's
then-
my thing too, though, and this is something where I go.
And
to,
I mean their motivations,
Yeah.
not the acting.
Well,
the acting
like-
they do
Yeah,
as good as they can do.
But
yeah.
would it be better if they had more likable protagonists? Because like Kyle Chandler as an actor, I personally, he's just a white man number 3.
Well, here's the thing.
pretty good.
But he is as mayonnaise as it gets on screen.
Well, no,
and,
he's not as
Like,
you can get.
but I'm
So
saying,
no,
like,
he's a
Did you see Game Night?
But like,
He was
okay,
great in that.
He's
No,
but
I
I'm
would
just
say that
saying,
he's a good actor.
Replacing him
and,
with John Hamm, this movie's instantly.
No,
more
he's a very
interesting.
good actor. I just think this movie did not give a ton there for him
Would
to
it
do
have
aside from be like my wife and my kid.
He's Tom Jane in Arrested Development. I just want my kids back. But like, if you put somebody like I said, John Hamm in this, even if you just the same stuff, it's instantly more interesting because he's a more interesting guy. Or
I don't,
if you put
like as somebody who likes John Hamm, I don't know that. I just think the way this story was sketched out, you essentially start with. I've been listening to the audiobook of different screenplay writing stuff because I was listening to the audiobook of the Save the Cat because I have the book and I looked through all of, like the lists and stuff. I was
Yeah.
actually listening to it. So watching this movie, I was like thinking through some of the screenplay items. Like, well, they missed a number of these things.
Yeah.
A number of these kind of standard things that you see in screenplays, but I just feel like you start the family. So you start with like Vera Farmiga and Kyle Chandler. You start at a point that they're not together anymore, and then you're kind of piecing together what their relationship is through the movie. But it's not super compelling because you don't really care.
because
you
they
never,
weren't in the previous,
and you
movie.
get no interactions between them aside, from over video chat. Really, I mean, so you get no interactions between them that really give you a grounding for what their relationship is. Because a lot of movies start Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark with Indy and Marion. Their relationship was in the past.
Oh, but
and
wait
they
a
meet
minute.
in the future, and then you kind of get the scope of their relationship through what they're doing in the present.
because Harrison Ford and her were more interesting than the people they had in this movie. So that's some of it.
so I'm
too.
just saying, like,
there's
see-
no the guy has no charisma in the entire movie. There's nothing about where I'm like, I want to watch this person on screen. There was nothing there. Whenever he had them on, it just like plain white toasted butter on it. It's just not.
But so the thing that saved it for me, which I was fine with him, but it wasn't him running around by himself. At least he had Bradley Whitford being, goofy the entire time, which was
comedic relief.
it was at least something. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like, he just kind of was throwing out one-liners. Again, that's when I told you guys I was like, because we were talking about this like in chat before earlier in the week. Like 2014 is not that tone. This is like. Kind of just goes there because they're just throwing whatever on
when you
screen
have
is entertaining
and
at
you
the
have
time.
Thomas Middleditch also doing some comedic relief.
Less successful, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
Which
like
I like him in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, Silicon Valley, and
he
like
was not that successful.
and the
in this, I don't
improv
think.
stuff and podcasts he's on. He's always
is that
super
the
funny.
Verizon commercial guy?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I hate him. He's the worst of the Verizon commercials.
No, I know he
no,
is.
No, he's outside of the Verizon
Yes,
commercials.
yes,
I like
no.
him.
That's what I'm saying. Verizon, no. This, he's just like, nah.
Well,
it doesn't quite work for me. Silicon Valley, he is a perfect.
If they had ported his character from Silicon Valley in place of the way they wrote the character that he played in this,
it's just a better written character in Silicon Valley.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
it's
Like
also-
he a lot of the characters in this just feel so one
But see,
dimensional.
like Kong had John C. Reilly. And
Yes, yeah.
again, this is where I'm going to, that when you have an actor, regardless of the material, that's just more interesting on screen, like John Goodman, I'm sorry, is more interesting than anybody in this
like there's a
movie.
lot of characters and actors, or a lot of actors have built-in cachet with people because
Yeah.
they've seen them and
This
stuff and know
movie
what they're
didn't have
capable
any-
of.
The only one that maybe had that is because of Stranger Things is Millie Bobby Brown, but even she didn't have that much to do. So it's like when you watch this movie, you gave me just like white bread characters that were boring, and then you didn't give me any actors that had any.
Well, and
or
two-
any-
Imagine if it was Christopher Walken. Like, we gotta kill Godzilla.
like we gotta kill. Interesting, like
No, he's like, we gotta kill
like
Godzilla.
for example, give me Don Cheadle or something because like at least he's
Yeah.
interesting, and you give me this guy. that's like,
Samuel L.
give me-
Jackson
you give-
versus Godzilla.
Like, but Samuel L. Jackson was in Kong. Interesting.
Well,
But-
so somebody,
That's right.
so
I
from
forgot.
like Kong,
he was actually versus Kong.
Yeah.
I forgot that.
But then you have Tom Hiddleston, who maybe didn't have the most to do, but again is a charismatic actor. So even though his character was kind of bland,
or
and
Tom,
just-
He's
no,
talking about
I'm talking
from
about
Kong.
Kong. Tom Hiddleston in Kong.
He's
He
talking
was
about
the-
Kong.
oh, Loki.
Yeah, and you have him, and it's like, what I'm saying is this movie to me was like such a swing and a miss on the characters
in
that
Kong
they gave.
Skull Island that Hiddleston and Brie Larson both didn't have much in the way of charismatic.
I feel like they wasted them.
Still, but again though, they were more interesting to watch on screen than who they gave me.
It's just a bummer whenever
like the supporting
the
characters,
writing fails, the actors,
the supporting characters in this movie. If they just gave me them instead, would have been more interesting.
So to
than
use some screenwriting parlance, in King of the Monsters, your lead characters didn't really ever have save the cat moments like Kyle Chandler's character. So that's just essentially when your lead characters, regardless of how conflicted they are, or whatever, they do something like they save a cat or they do something.
They do. He does. He specifically does, because I was thinking about that.
So what does he do?
He goes down and it's not even just save. It's not necessarily saving somebody.
He rescues
the soldiers.
He rescues the soldiers. He does go back down. He risks his life to go back down. I was thinking, they try to fill that gap right here. He specifically does.
Because he drops that helicopter to knock the doors.
He's all the way up in the elevator and everything's coming down. And he decides
about that. He doesn't.
He decides to go back down and specifically.
Well, I was meaning more like the Vera Farmiga character doesn't really do anything.
But she's not supposed to. Let's not get into that.
We'll get into that in spoilers.
I'm just saying, like, you're supposed to have some emotional investment or whatever in the character.
No,
but
it's very weak. And even if it isn't saving somebody, it is you getting them on their side to kind of, which, I mean, you have sympathy that he's worried about his daughter. You know what I mean? I think there are some things, they're just not strong. I don't think at all.
And again, I just think some of it to me is just, I'm going to keep harping on this because I just wish they'd maybe had a different cast. Like I said, or just gave me.
I think a different viewpoint into the world, because you could have had the same overall story arc, but maybe had. So I think what you could have done is kept what they achieved overall, like the plot they were going with. There, like you're saying, there are some interesting elements to that. They could have pared down the relationships between the characters and had there be less conflict there and made it more engaging, because the thing you care about in this movie isn't the interpersonal relationship of a family who lost a child 5 years ago and now they're dealing with the fallout of that. That is not what you care about. You care about Godzilla and the monsters. Yeah. So if you have a storyline that's much more primal and much more, pared back, where you can utilize all of the screen time to advance it, as opposed to this, I kept wondering, I was like, were these characters in the 2014 one? It feels like I'm missing a lot here to make me care. Because
that's a failure on the script, because like something like the Planet of the Apes movies, the recent trilogy, every trilogy, new characters every single time, and
you're talking about in each individual movie,
yes, except for Caesar, the lead.
He's the Godzilla. He's the one that
he is the protagonist throughout, so he is the through line, and you do care about him the whole time because you always have his perspective also, but. It can be done. We have Godzilla through it all, or we could have Ken Watanabe. You know what I mean?
Planet of the Apes they had better screenwriting. Yeah. I mean, and I haven't seen those movies. I've just heard a whole lot about them.
They are great.
And so I would think that part of it isn't to trash the screenwriting. I think maybe some of the issue could be that this is falling into the formula that those Toho films were, where it's kind of forgettable plot and story and characters that just fill the time up when there's not monsters fighting.
Yeah. Which again, too, we don't know how much. So. We don't know how much this film changed in editing. The script could have fleshed out this stuff a lot more, and the complaint might have been, "Hey, there's not enough monster fighting, so what do? We take out a lot more of the human stuff." Yeah. That could have very well happened, but what we got was something that felt very just one dimensional, and the turns and the characters, which we can get into spoilers here shortly because we need to really talk about some of this stuff. But yeah, so I like the monster fights. I had a good time just going to the theaters, sitting down, eating popcorn, watching a big Godzilla film with a bunch of monster fights, laughing occasionally. Bradley Whitford, he made it light as well. The character stuff was going like, what in the hell are you doing? But I didn't care because I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I'm about to see a monster come in and crush everybody.
You brought this to wrestling because this is a perfect analogy, I guess, or pretty good. Because in wrestling, there might be a great match. But I'm just going to use the McFoley Undertaker match because everybody knows about that for the most part, especially I guess horror people because there's a lot of people like. But anyway, the cage match, the storyline leading up to that, did it matter at all? Did you be like, no? The only thing you cared about was watching McFoley get chokeslammed through the top of the cage onto a bed of nails, and that's what this movie was. Yes, the story arcs might have been weak, but to be honest, you did not go there to watch a story. If you went to Godzilla to watch a story, then that is not what this movie is. This movie is about monsters fighting.
And it can be because again, Planet of the Apes was, people a war of ape soldiers, but that was so much more to that film. It can be, but something else we were talking about before, and I was like, why this film gets a pass for me when normally things don't. If I'm like, is because it is Godzilla and kaijus, because we don't get. We're not getting like 3 of these films a year. You know, if we were getting 3 monster films a year, even if it was Godzilla, but they were, really good, like we get like Avengers or something. If it would have faltered, I would have been like, well, what do I care? I see awesome monster battles all the time. Yeah. We haven't seen quite like this in big budget Hollywood films really almost ever in this way, only because it hasn't been done, in the 2010s. We had some weaker CGI or stuff prior to that, but Pacific Rim is great as well, but it's been a while since that film came out. And again, this is Godzilla. Yeah. It is different. So I think for me, it gets a big pass only because of the novelty factor, where if that wasn't there, this film would have fell pretty hard for me.
I kind of feel like with Godzilla, there also is just that familiarity with it because we all grew up with it. And at some point in time as a kid, you really liked it. We
grew up with it, but you think if a kid was, if a kid was born if a kid that was 19 years old right now, they basically
because they were born after the gods after the Matthew Broderick, so they
you know what I mean,
but for us, like even though we had 98 Godzilla, still because they were still doing the Toho films in the 90s, so we got to watch some of that. But I feel like
always on TV.
Just the familiarization with the characters, I think, makes you like it more.
So something this movie did that kind of gave it the 90s feel, and is maybe why it made me feel that the characters really hadn't done any good deeds to make them worth caring about, is during the middle of this huge, mass destruction where hundreds of thousands or millions of people have died. People are making quippy jokes and joking and then being so consumed with their family dynamics that they don't care about the death that's around them completely.
But again,
and so to me, if you are a soldier, and I mean, I guess part of it, but if you're anybody, if you're like a main character in an action film and you're driving around through, post-apocalyptic wasteland where everybody has died or a lot of people have died, and you're just making quippy jokes, then it doesn't make it seem like the gravity of the situation is sink in.
Endgame came out this year.
Now they may have evacuated the town, but there's no way you can evacuate millions of people in a very short span of time.
Now just remember that in Endgame, Tony Stark's only motivation was not the billions and trillions and
I don't
whatever.
Spoil it too much.
No, that's not. Okay, his motivation is Spider-Man. That was it. So you can't be okay with it in that. And then he was quippy and made fun of stuff. And then look at this movie because I feel like that's a part of it because I've never been.
Well, it's a different tone.
You also had over 10. You had 10 years of movies to get a feel for who he was, what character, what motivations were. Yeah. Versus if you have 15 minutes with a character.
You didn't get
the
much.
2014 Godzilla. It took this stuff pretty seriously. You stay with again the lead. Not super interesting. He did a fine job in 2014, but I mean he's essentially a soldier, and he kind of. Almost works his way back into. He's trying to get home, but he kind of works his way back into serving at the time only because he knows he can help out. And so you're seeing it from his perspective and the soldiers with him. So it's they're taking it seriously as hell because they're the ones about to die. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the whole tone of that one is try to scare you with the scale of Godzilla and the destruction and being hey, there's no stopping this just giant creature, which I loved. You know what I mean?
When you contrast that with somebody, it's oh hell, they just ate that person.
And he's he's been working out. Which honestly, I was fine. You know what I mean? I was fine with that in this, but man, it walks the line so tightly for me that if it was anything less than it would totally just fall off the map.
I think it worked better tonally in Kong. Because in that you had soldiers who just got out of Vietnam, so they were definitely a little tone deaf.
You had people on an island where there weren't there weren't millions and millions of civilians. But still,
you had people that had served together for a long time watching. But they
had a camaraderie.
Yeah, but it was a little bit different because again they just came out of a war, and that So I think it works a little bit better with that.
In this movie, in King of the Monsters, the different soldiers and people. So, of course, Ken Watanabe, because he's a very good actor. That
and people probably see him in a lot of different stuff.
He was in Batman Begins and Inception and a ton of stuff. They're bigger Hollywood movies in addition to all the other stuff he's done. But when it came to the actual soldiers in King of the Monsters, I was okay, beard guy and Shaved Head Woman. Like those are the two.
I barely remember one.
And I only remember because I mean they had the most dialogue of any of the soldier characters, and they had unique physical traits, which is a great screenwriting thing. Like give somebody a memorable trait so you can at least visually connect it and not have to remember like guy number 5 out of 30 people that look the exact same. So you didn't have a lot of like Skull Island. You did know all of the soldiers.
Ice Cube's son was the one you're talking about, the bearded guy. That's O'Shea Jackson, which I knew that's who it was. I was like, man, that's got to be Ice Cube's kid because I'm pretty
sure he looked familiar.
He played him in the what movie was it they did?
Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah, Straight Outta Compton. So you had, which is funny because you have that guy who obviously is a good actor, and he was good on moments, but I probably would have been okay. It probably would have been more interesting. They just kind of followed suit from the 2014 and just went more after the military people instead of, because it's just a really weird thing to do a sequel and make the antagonist people that weren't in the first one.
To be fair, though, I think if you see that, but also too, that one, I think the story was over between them. But if you see that first one, you would probably be glad that they kind of went in a different direction. And I am too, because I was, he carried that film, but he carried it, and I was ready to move on.
So something I would say with just in general with movies like this is I don't know. It seems like it's a huge story point that comes up a lot with like parents who are driven apart because of the loss of a child.
Because it's easy.
It's a trope that's been around for forever, and it's been in a ton of stuff.
It's also a very real thing too.
Yeah, but
because I think most families who lose a child, like the divorce rate's extremely high, so it's a very real thing that most people could understand.
It almost does the what was it? Is it Batman versus Superman thing, or is it Batman versus Superman thing where they use the fallout from the previous film to kind of build tragedy to roll into this. For that one, they lost people because of Superman fighting.
Bruce Wayne's running around in Gotham. He's like,
so they kind of do that, which I kind of like. You know what I mean? I like the idea of that. There is a connective tissue. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't. Yeah, I don't think it works.
Well, and then there was the part of the movie when Godzilla and King Ghidorah are like, Mothra? You know Mothra? And they stop fighting and become friends.
That didn't happen.
No, that's a joke. Because Batman v Superman, the way that Batman and Superman stop fighting is because, Superman says Martha? And then Bruce Wayne, or Batman's like, how do you know Martha? And then they're like, both of our mothers are named Martha. So
son of a bitch. And then they shake hands and they start fighting.
And then they do
cut in and pause and explain every joke we make in the edit.
I mean, because it really makes the jokes better when you explain it. But yeah, so I guess we can kind of wrap up our non-spoiler thoughts and move into spoilers because once again, it's monsters fighting. It gives you, so it sounds like
good monsters fighting.
It gives you more, and it's not shaky cam. It's not Michael Bay because Transformers 2. You have robots. No, it's just a perfect example of you have that is where you have 30 minutes of robots fighting in the desert.
Yeah,
but you can't. There's no geography of where they're at. You can't really tell who is who. And that was just like, okay, you've wasted my time. As opposed to this movie, it is very clear who is who, what's happening, where they're at, who has the upper hand. Like, all that is very clear.
Yeah, the CG work was great.
It's just, and I think part of it is it being done that way, where it's clear what's happening, makes you want more of it. As opposed to some movies where it's just like a mishmash of CGI that you can't really follow it easily. It makes it to where you're like, there was probably too much of that. So that was probably more of what it is. When you see it done well, you want more of it.
Well, and two, I guess my criticism of a lot of this movie is I just watched Jurassic World and Jurassic World Dark
Fallen Kingdom,
whatever it's called. I keep wanting to call it Dark Tower or something. I don't know why, but I just watched those back to back right before I watched this. And you have Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, which are the two leads in that, and even though in the second one they're not given that much stuff, just they're very charismatic and very likable. So even if they're just literally farting in each other's faces on screen, you're going to enjoy it. It doesn't really matter. Whereas in this movie, I can't say her name. Vera
Farmiga.
I like her as an actress. I think in a lot of stuff she does, she's very good. Just the character in this, what they gave her to do, didn't really work. And then on the other end, the other guy they had, both of them kind of had the same tone. So there was no they were the same characters. One was just they had different ideologies. There was no difference between the two.
There was no heyday Harrison Ford because the thing is, like, Vera Farmiga is a very good actress, and I like her in a lot of stuff.
But she just didn't work in this.
I just think they didn't give her enough to do.
Well, it is, again, you need characters, to balance each other out, because if those are the two main characters that the story goes through the most, and then when they feel exactly the same, just different motives,
then
you have
Charles Dance, and you barely get any insight into his character.
He's just a throughway. But, like, there needs to be balance of the characters. If one's dark, you can't have two dark characters.
So here's the thing, just without spoiling what it is, there's a point in the movie where a character, to justify their point of view, shows a little pre-made video that they cut together, a little mini documentary they cut together.
Yeah.
So that tells you the shortcut that the narrative uses at times to kind of explain character motivation.
Because it's hard.
And real quick too. So I think this is as of last Sunday, 6/2. The totals of from June 2nd, at least the foreign totals and domestic, but I don't know if domestics have been updated. Domestic is updated June 7th, but foreign was updated June 2nd. So total, it's made 197 million.
It's not good.
The budget is 170 million, so they probably spent half that on marketing. But we probably will have this whole weekend of the foreign take too. That might, because the foreign's where it made most of the money. It made 67 domestic, 130 foreign. And in China alone, it made 69 million. So,
but the problem is you got Pets 2, X-Men Phoenix, or you got Dark Phoenix. And then I think next week you got Men in Black. Then you got Toy Story.
Yeah, but who knows about I don't know. It's all going to determine on what this does in the foreign box office, because I think domestically it's probably going to drop off.
Well, the sequel's already been shot, so
I thought it was still
it's in production.
Yeah, it's in production. I don't think it's been finished yet.
So Godzilla 2014 made $200 million in the U.S. and 328 domestic for a worldwide total of 529. If this movie can leg it out to that range, it'll probably at least make 400 million worldwide.
I don't think so, because it's going to get buried. You got Toy Story.
But here's the thing: most of the movies at least have a 2-time multiplier on worldwide from week one. So if week one was about $200 million, then that should feasibly get to at least 400. But the point is, they've already got the other ones shooting. It's not.
Yeah, it's going to happen. It sounds
it's
like
not. There's no way it won't.
It's not going to not.
But if that one falters on its take, this franchise is probably dead.
But and this is something that we've talked about before, and we've seen the reverse of this, so I don't know if it necessarily means anything, but do you think that Rotten Tomatoes does affect what people want to spend their money on?
I think that
there has to be some effect there, because sometimes a movie can be bad and still make a lot of money, because Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom got really poor scores and still broke $1 billion and made a ton of money.
I think it depends on what the franchise is and what people are looking for from it. And if it's something that has kind of a built-in audience. So, in the current world, so let's just say Zack Snyder movies, he has a certain audience that will show up to watch whatever he does at this point and vocally disagree with everyone about it. Yeah. And the critics are most assured to give what he makes relatively poor scores. I think for him, as long as they keep the investment in line with what they know the return will be, he can keep making movies and people will show up. But there are some franchise, I think too, the other thing they didn't do a good job of was clarifying to people. It's like, hey, if you've seen Godzilla 2014, cool. If not, still come see this one. Because I think sometimes you make a movie that's a sequel, you have to clarify, do you really have needed to see the first one, or can you go in and enjoy it mostly without having seen it? And I don't know they did a good enough job explaining that, because I was still confused, well, do I need to stay up till 4 a.m. tonight to watch the first one first? But I think as opposed to the Marvel movies, for a fact you need to watch Avengers before Avengers.
I think it's good these are PG-13. I almost think that they should shift the marketing to maybe get more kids in. You know what I mean? Get more kids in the seat.
Have a cartoon.
Not a cartoon.
Have Godzuki in it.
Well, here's the thing.
No, but just because my nephews, they loved Kong. They loved the Peter Jackson King Kong.
That's
they watched
the
heck out of that when they were a kid, and they'd wait for the Kong fights because Kong fought a dinosaur, a T-Rex. They love that.
Dark movie too.
That's what I'm saying. Kids like monsters
and the
fighting.
Bugs eat people.
This is this is definitely I don't know. I feel like it was marketed towards our age range.
Yeah.
If they just do shift the marketing, they don't have to shift the film at all. If they just shift the marketing a little bit more and then make it, I don't know what to do because people loved the trailers for this, which I mostly avoided. They need to try to get kids in on this, like pump out the toys, do something to.
They had Millie Bobby Brown in it, which is like the perfect opportunity to get teenage kids in.
Which is why I think
I'm talking about younger than teenage.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but even though like a lot of young girls probably like Millie Bobby Brown, and like young kids, so because of Stranger Things. So you put them in there. But the interesting thing on this is this shows you the difference of the Rotten Tomatoes score from critics is 40%. The audience score is 85%. So there's a huge
people going to actually see it like it.
Yeah. And what I want to say with this on the critics stuff on this is like when critics go into a movie, is there, because of the shared universes the MCU made so popular, is there just people go in every single time expecting to get a movie on that level of quality, and if it's anything less, do they meet, because you've had
it's hard to say. It's hard to say critics because so many people are critics now. There are a lot, but you got to think these critics, they aren't the mass audience where some mass audiences only see MCU movies. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. These critics, if they're critics, they watch hundreds and hundreds of movies a year. So the MCU stuff they're watching is like, 5% of the movies they watch. You know what I mean? Like, I think they have.
Read but reviews of top critics, and in their reviews will be, well, this isn't nearly as well organized as the MCU, and their top critic reviews.
Well, here's the thing, though. I don't think people are saying that we want a shared universe on par with the MCU. I think what they're saying is we want a big 4-quadrant blockbuster that actually has a well thought out script and hits all the beats you expect to hit, and you're satisfied coming. And I think it's a different thing saying we want a high quality blockbuster. That's different than saying we want movies that have 30 years of mythology and blah blah blah. Like, I think people are just saying we want a well-crafted.
And I think that's a totally valid demand, like, because the MCU is consistent. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
on their script,
because I think what's happened is, like, regardless of what you think of those movies, stuff like Captain America: The Winter Soldier, like a lot of these, or the Avengers or whatever, like a lot of the movies, they're well thought out, well scripted, engaging films, and they're blockbusters that have huge budgets and a lot of CGI. It didn't used to be the case that movies had as much thought put in. If you watch movies in the 90s and the 2000s, a lot of times...
Well, pick a movie you like. Look at The Rock. Like, the
logic in a lot of movies isn't necessarily there. And I think they just raised the stakes in terms of what you need to do as a big budget, CGI-laden, event movie to succeed. Simply having a bunch of effects is no longer enough. You need to have a good script around it.
But the thing that's funny, though, is you look at your critic consensus and an audience consensus. Like, the audience who watched that movie and felt the need to review it obviously was a little more highly on it than. So I wonder if sometimes people will go into movies that are maybe a little bougie, and they go in to watch Godzilla, and it's like, well, this isn't Oscar worthy, and they give it a bad. And it's like,
I don't think it's. I think their opinion is totally valid. Like, a lot of times, I may argue one way or the other, but for me, I'm like, yeah, I enjoyed it. But if somebody hates this movie,
I get it.
They could rip it apart and trash it.
Yeah,
so I get why it has terrible reviews if it's not that specific audience, because you think people going to see it want to see this. A lot of critics only reviewed it because it was their duty, it was their job. So if they're going to see this and it's not their thing before, they're going to be like, look. Even if I didn't like the monster fighting, the human side was trash. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the thing. Like, that's their job.
Because it's like when you go in, like, to watch a movie, Godzilla, to be honest, like, there is always going to be some semblance of social commentary because that's what it came from, was the nuclear era. So all that's always going to be there. But at the end of the day, it's for the monster fights, and I think if that's what you've done the best, which I'm not saying I give it any slack because the story was not great. But it's just funny to me. You just see the difference in between what the general audience person, and to me sometimes I feel like if they got out what they wanted out of it, then maybe it just funny.
And that's totally fine if there's enough people there paying tickets to get what they want. You know what I mean? That's the issue. It doesn't matter. The reviews. All that matters is that box office number to see if they're going to make more, if it actually succeeded and gave the fans.
So what do we get this movie out of 10?
You start off.
So was it Rotten Tomatoes is 40%, the audience score is 85%. I think the Metacritic is 40-50. I think it's a 6. Because it gives you good enough monster battles that you wanted more of. So it's one of those things where, for what it is, because this isn't saying that I'm rating, because the ratings, they're all subjective, and you can't really compare one rating to another, because this is a far different type of film than something like, say, No Country for Old Men. I'm not comparing those at all. But like you could
also gave a 6.
But you could but you could watch a Godzilla movie and give it a 10 out of 10 as a Godzilla. I can't talk, as a Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
And that's not saying that it is your favorite movie of the year, your top 5. It's just saying for what you want from that movie, it delivers perfectly. To me, for a Godzilla movie, this is, so if you're a younger person that or somebody that just doesn't have any tolerance to watch the old Toho ones, because those do go off the rails a little bit with the narrative stuff, like this one delivers far better than most of those, at least the older ones. Because I remember, wasn't it the little women that Mothra was connected to?
That's what I always remember, the twins.
Yeah.
Because they were aliens.
Which actually, there's twins in this as well.
Yeah.
There's a whole twin family, which is kind of a nice touch. But there's no singing or talking twins that communicate with Mothra.
So it's just so I think that it's a bit more palatable for people that haven't watched all of those.
It's a definitely more Americanized version, because the whole ones
it's an Americanized version, but it at least keeps the mythology around it and things like that.
Which actually, this is one of the few Godzilla movies I think that Toho had nothing to do with, because a lot of times they have some connection. This is just purely.
Well, I know the Godzilla '98 or whatever, they were so made
Godzilla 2000 in response,
and then he killed a version of the Godzilla from the American one or something.
Yeah, there was, I don't know what was that. It wasn't Final Wars, was it? It was after that. They put tons of different Godzilla monsters in there, and then one of them was the American one, and the other Godzilla kills it.
Because it was just like a big T-Rex.
Yeah. So I'd say a 6.
I agree with you. I'm at a 6. Like I said, for a summer movie, if you just want to go in just having just something that you enjoy that doesn't make you think a lot, but is aesthetically pleasing on screen with the monster fights and stuff. This is that. It's maybe not as cool as a concept as something like the original Cloverfield or
Pacific
Rim. But again, just being that it's Godzilla and Mothra and all these other monsters, that to me makes it instantly more interesting.
I will say that
you have connections to. You have some previous knowledge base, and you know what you're going to get.
So in this movie, at one point, I was sitting there thinking, if the setup for this had been different, this would have been a Power Rangers film.
Yeah,
because I was you could just imagine the point where they bring in the big Zord and fight monsters.
I think at one point. There was a Japanese Spider-Man TV show where he had a battle bot and he fought monsters.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of. I've seen a lot of clips now on Facebook recently.
That's Pacific Rim you're describing, William.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying. I'm saying but so whenever movies like this, another screenwriting rule is you don't show news coverage of stuff. This one does show news coverage, and that to me felt more cheesy. Reminded me of Power Rangers, when a bunch of monsters were attacking stuff.
Well, it is feel cheesier than Spider-Man 3 when they had the news coverage of the Venom nest with Mary Jane.
No, it felt better done than that.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm 6 out of 10.
It's just if you have a news anchor the Eastern Seaboard's gone, but in today's news, the stock market rebounded after the.
But I think 6 out of 10. Like I said, I think it's a fine enough summer movie. I mean, I think it's a lot better quality than some of the Transformers we've gotten over the years. I don't think it's quite as bad as the Rotten Tomato critic score leads it to be, but I can see what Sean said, if somebody who came in just hated it, I would get that too.
Yeah,
it's not a movie I feel very passionately about, where I would just die on some type of hill.
No, you don't understand it.
Yeah,
no, you probably understand it perfectly clearly, and you just don't like it. And that's
but fine. To me, I think Sean bringing this is the WWE, this is WCW, this is it's just a wrestling match. The build-up might not be the best, but the fights were really good. And if that's what you like, then this is a good movie for that. But if
there's funny quips here and there, that's at least it's something. You know what I mean? It could have been, they could have made it straight line serious, and then the human stuff been boring, not be as terrible as it is, but not have jokes in there.
Yeah.
And you're there is absolutely nothing worth watching on that side. At least let's watch some dumb jokes that are, even if they're cringy or stupid, it's something. You know what I mean?
I think it just had something. Like I said, it just, the fights were good, and that's honestly why I went to watch a movie. I don't really go to watch a Godzilla movie, and for me to watch the people, I want to see the Godzilla stuff, because what we've gotten in the past hasn't always been the best. So
yeah. I mean, so for me, again, there was a novelty factor here. It felt something different. it did feel like I was watching a big, blockbuster from the 90s, which I love and kind of miss in a weird way. It's like, hey, we're spending a lot of money, but this movie's also really dumb, but also the money makes it very cool because of the stuff we're doing with it. You know what I mean? Like,
it looks way better than
yeah, like for me, I give it like a 7.5. Only I got so much enjoyment that this will probably be like, something finally I look back on watching in theaters this summer at the end of the year.
Did you enjoy it more than Kong? I know it's been a while since
I think so. Kong's probably a better movie, but I felt like that frustrated me because I really like Brie Larson and I like Tom Hiddleston a lot too. But Brie Larson I felt was so wasted because I think that was like the first big Hollywood film I'd seen her in. I'd watched her on her TV show with Toni Collette. Can't think of the name of it. She was phenomenal in there. That's when I became a fan of her. And then I don't know if I watched Room before that, which that was a big film, but it wasn't like a blockbuster, And then she was in one other, Scott Pilgrim. She was great in that.
Yeah, and then she was also, she had like other like critical movies.
This was like a big summer blockbuster.
Yeah,
she was
pre-Captain Marvel.
Supposedly a lead role, and she was, but I was just so upset at how I felt like she was squandered in that I was like, eh.
Like that one had a good cast.
Yeah, and I like Kong. Kong was awesome in it.
Well, I think too,
that's going to be the cool thing is to see Kong with this Godzilla.
Well, and that when we talked about, I think both Kong Skull Island and Godzilla King of the Monsters had too large of an ensemble cast, where it was kind of hard to focus in and get any real characterization out of some of them. Because a lot of the characters, like in Kong, I think the thing that had in its favor was you had John Goodman, Sam Jackson. And even someone like Shea Wiggum, who is just one of the soldiers, he brings like the same earnestness to every role he does, so it's easy just to jump in and enjoy it.
You have to get killed, though.
Then you also had John C. Reilly, who was just like, he had serious moments, but he was really the comedic relief.
Yeah.
So you had somebody like him who's a really versatile actor that you wouldn't think about, but like, he kind of that's where this movie falls short. It didn't have that. It didn't really have.
And the people that it did have that are more like Bradley Whitford, because I think I guess we move into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, we'll move into spoilers now. Discuss the plot points.
A whole lot of plot.
I mean, if you really only want to see destruction porn, then you really don't care about the plot anyway. But we will discuss the full plot for the movie starting now. So you have been warned. So the whole plot being essentially that Vera Farmiga's character decides that we should raise the Titans and get all of them out so that they can retake Earth and bring balance back, because her thoughts were that they were meant to protect the planet and we as humans are destroying it, and we are the reason that things are coming to it, species going extinct and all this stuff. So that by releasing the Titans, they would bring balance back and make the Earth a better place, was what her thoughts were.
It's basically Thanos. They want to wipe out most of the population.
And
it's just like it, yeah.
And so that was her
But it
plan.
Connects nothing to the loss of her son. That's the bad part. It's like...
Well, no, she said at one point, her daughter's like, he wouldn't have wanted this.
That's what I'm saying, but like her plan, her plan wasn't spawned because of the loss of her son necessarily. You know what I mean? Like
her plan would result in others losing their
exactly.
children.
Like that's what makes it so stupid. And her twisting. Basically she had. She was fine seemingly with those soldiers coming in, killing all of her coworkers,
her friends,
and then just kind of the way she flopped, and then we were kind of supposed to be sympathetic for her and forgive her at the end. Like
the only thing to me that would have been okay is at one point she's like, "I'm good now," so she goes to find her daughter and gets a Humvee and drives out, and then she finds every movie just magically shows up. The only thing that should have been done is they should have immediately shot her in the head and threw her in a ditch somewhere.
They're like, come on. Like, I get her daughter.
No, they should have immediately shot her, threw her in a ditch, gave her like a pauper's grave, and just went on with it.
I guess the husband maybe, only still cares for her because
he has a daughter.
Because the daughter does.
Yeah.
But if it was no daughter, I'd be like, dude, you're a monster. You're not the person I thought you were. You know what I mean? Like after doing something like that.
The only appropriate response the soldiers should have either been in the town, I think it was in Mexico they're in, where the volcano.
That was Boston. I'm just kidding.
No, where they're in that Mexican town, and the monster comes out of the volcano and it like kills all these people. And the only response would be to shoot her immediately and then just throw her out of the vehicle.
Well, then,
all right, we're going.
So then the other on the monster side, the plot line is essentially that Godzilla was the good kind of leader that kept them all in check.
He was good. Godzilla is like a chaotic neutral type because
put it this way: Godzilla was
he's neither good nor bad.
Godzilla was the one that kept the monsters in check and kept the things in balance.
He was
And King Ghidorah was not from Earth. It was an alien that crashed onto Earth. And then it was Godzilla and Ghidorah fighting for control of the monsters. So, when they fight initially in Antarctica, Godzilla
freeze Ghidorah? Like, how did that end?
Yeah.
No. What happened was Godzilla was kind of losing, and then all the different fighter jets came in and shot missiles and bombs.
I'm talking about originally.
How did he get in the ice?
Yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, it could have been like,
the Big Bang.
It maybe was the
put them all into
Ice Age.
hibernation or something.
Yeah.
But and then Godzilla was only reawakened in the nuclear era when we were testing atomic weapons or something. But so Godzilla and King Ghidorah would fight for control of the monsters. And so they fight in Antarctica, and it kind of comes to a stalemate, and King Ghidorah flies away, and Godzilla goes in search.
He bit off one of his heads.
No, that wasn't then.
Wasn't. I can't remember when that was.
And then they fought in the ocean.
Yeah.
So then when they're at that island, Godzilla fights Ghidorah, and Godzilla that time gets the upper hand, and they're fighting underwater, and Godzilla rips off one of the heads, and that's when the military drops the oxygen destroying bomb. So Godzilla actually had the upper hand and may have just won if they had left it alone. But instead, they used the bomb that almost kills Godzilla, but doesn't kill Ghidorah, and Ghidorah flies away.
Ghidorah's not.
And minor spoilers for the original Godzilla. That's how that one ends. They use the same sort of bomb, an oxygen bomb, and it kills Godzilla in the original. Totally. But it was a cool callback that they're using the same sort of weapon, basically, that they killed Godzilla before for this. That's when I walked into the theater. I heard them say, "What are you talking about? We're going to bring Godzilla back from the dead." So I knew halfway through Godzilla was going to die, and they were going to bring you back.
Yeah, so
that was a bit of a bummer, but I was like, oh, well.
Well, I mean, but here's the thing. So the bomb goes off, and then Godzilla, they have like a track where they can see his heart rate and stuff, and it looks like he's dead. But then Mothra hatches. So Mothra cocooned, and then becomes Mothra, and then flies around, and then they can hear a faint heartbeat of Godzilla. And then he goes to kind of what's like the lost city of Atlantis or something to heal because it's got a bunch of radiation.
It's like kind of in the center of the earth.
But then,
Earth.
Because there's radiation in the earth, so it's close.
Since Godzilla is out of commission, then all of the other Titans are waking up because Ghidorah is, I guess, like emitting a signal or something, and then telling them like, go screw stuff up, go destroy stuff. So
in
then they're all
Step
attacking
Brothers,
everywhere.
where the scene where they show up for the interview and we're here just to screw stuff. That's essentially what.
But then the other thing with the Orca device, it doesn't make a whole ton of sense to me. Is I thought it needed to be close to the creatures for it to have an effect. But when Millie Bobby Brown's character takes it to Fenway Park and puts it on the loudspeakers, it makes all of them across the globe calm down. It's like, how could they hear it from that far away? I mean, I don't.
Well, they might also just have like supersonic.
Yeah, at least
hearing
I don't know. Yeah,
But I mean, so you have some elements like that kind of.
That's a small complaint in the sea of like weird decisions and choices.
But then, so then Ken Watanabe and this group have to go to essentially to
also
Atlantis.
too, they kill Sally Hawkins in Antarctica. We didn't talk about that.
Yeah, she is eaten by.
Her and Ken Watanabe were the only characters that I remember from the previous film
and
besides
she just gets
Godzilla.
eaten in a very.
And I'm like, because I was hoping to see more of them. You know, she was in Shape of Water. You know,
Yeah.
Like, you know, she's like. She's an Oscar-winning movie, yeah. You know what I mean. Like, so I was like, "Oh, cool. Maybe they're going to beef them up a little bit in this, and they're going to be the through line through all these movies."
She
just,
unceremoniously gets just chopped down.
Both of them die in this movie.
But it was done in a way where I was like, "Wait a minute, I only realized she was dead when they were on the ship, and it showed her thing like X'd out."
I wonder if they made that in post, like, "Hey, we got to make sure everybody knows she's dead. Let's have a thing that says deceased." Because I noticed that too. I did the same thing where I thought she died, but I'm like, surely to God they would make more deal out of it.
Because like the Predator had a scene where a major character died, and you're like, you didn't realize they were really dead till later. So like she just kind of died in this unceremonious way, and she seemed to me, and like nobody really cared.
Well, the main guy, the main guy kind of cared too, because he's like somberly staring at the screen.
But like if you weren't paying super close attention, you wouldn't have known it happened. And then you have Godzilla where they have to go and take a warhead and detonate it.
One out of these movies.
They have to take a warhead and detonate it to wake up Godzilla and to recharge him because he was being recharged by the radioactive material down there, but that could take a long time. So essentially, Godzilla never dies. He just needs more radiation to heal.
I mean, you could probably kill him.
So they take the warhead down and detonate it, so they'll just fill them up with all the energy. And basically, too, there's whirlpools, or the Earth is hollow, and there's tunnels with like these super fast whirlpool water jets. So it'll transport you hundreds of miles instantly, which is how Godzilla gets around. And this is another movie where people get from one side of the globe to the other in what appears to be about an hour.
Which I kind of love in this movie.
Yeah, but it kind of makes sense. They had this like super advanced flying.
Because if you have, regardless of your ship, if you have to go from Antarctica to Mexico, it's going to take more than just an hour. But then the thing is, if you had travel take a realistic amount of time, the Earth would be destroyed.
Well, you got
because the monsters are just destroying stuff.
Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt that this huge ship they have is just faster than almost any. Well, then, I'm gonna give them the benefit.
So then there's
the
other element. So like when something that didn't make a ton of sense to me. So when Rodan comes out of that volcano and fights Ghidorah and gets beat up and gets thrown in the water.
I love the Rodan fight with the jets and stuff.
Yeah,
that was very cool.
Yeah.
I loved all of that. And that was a great suspense scene with him going after their jet and the other jet landing up there.
Yeah.
Like I love that sequence.
Yeah, no, like cool. The sequence was cool. Just the thing I didn't quite get is then later Rodan is subservient to Ghidorah
because he got beat by him.
So it's like the monsters have, but then all the other monsters hadn't interacted with Ghidorah yet, and they were listening to the orders.
Well, because I think like there's probably a lot that's implied here too, but maybe those other monsters.
Well, maybe it's after
maybe they'd already fought him before. Rodan maybe had not, and then
maybe it's also that once Godzilla was out of the picture, they're like, well, crap, he was the leader, so now I got to listen to the new leader.
Yeah,
like maybe that's part of it. I mean, that's kind of what they implied, but yeah. So you have that, and then eventually, so then once Godzilla gets the warhead, he gets supercharged, and that's when Bradley Whitford's like, oh, he's been working out.
It's his spinach, basically, which I kind of love that stupid conceit too. Yeah, I love that too. I'm like, oh, cool, we got Super Godzilla now.
But the thing is funny to me is like they're talking about the radiation levels. It's like how you say
Watanabe.
Watanabe, like he dies obviously because he has to do a suicide mission to recharge Godzilla, and they do that. But then they're talking about looking at the radiation levels of Godzilla, and he's like, well, we only have so much time left
before he goes thermonuclear.
But the amount of radiation that all these people, because you remember the submarine was exposed to the atomic blast underwater because the ship was tossed. So the amount of radiation these people all were exposed to, they'd probably be dead. Because like Millie Bobby Brown's like,
well, Bradley Whitford even says at some point I want to have a kid that doesn't have flippers.
Yeah,
which I don't know exactly, but so something that Godzilla 2014. So they have a nuclear reactor that's. I think it's because of Godzilla. There's another creature in there too. I can't remember exactly, but essentially they go back to this place in Japan, where the nuclear reactor exploded. Because it's like quarantine because it's all radioactive and stuff. But Bryan Cranston's character wants to go back to his house to get his research because he thinks something else big has happened. Basically, he suspects Godzilla.
Yeah.
He doesn't. I don't know if he knows exactly, but he's like, something happened. It wasn't just an earthquake or something. And so they get there and they realize there's no radiation. So essentially, I think Godzilla absorbs radiation.
Yeah, he drains it.
So I don't know if you could maybe explain away like, hey, when Godzilla's around, like he's absorbing it all, and who knows? You could say whatever. Yeah, but anyway, that's something cool that they touch on in the original film. They don't re-explain. They don't have to. But
they do a lot of hand-wavy science to explain stuff, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Well, but you get to the final confrontation that's in Boston, right? So
in Boston.
So they're in Boston. Godzilla shows up. They're fighting Ghidorah. And then, Mothra shows up.
And Rodan shows up.
And Rodan's bad, and Mothra kind of defeats. Anyway, I thought that was really cool because you kind of expected Godzilla to get some help. Now, Mothra, I guess, gets killed in the battle.
I wish he would. Yeah,
it didn't make it super clear, but yeah, Ghidorah, when all three heads shot the electric, it blew up Mothra.
Yeah,
and it's almost like Mothra's powers went on Godzilla too. Like all the sparkles came down.
So which kind of sucks is like Mothra, I would like to maybe see a little more, and I'm sure they'll bring Mothra back.
Maybe they can bring Mothra back. Yeah,
but
at the end, like did you watch all the credits and the post credits?
Yes. I thought there was just one.
So in the credits, it shows like different clips and little vignettes and stuff, and it says, "Is there a new Mothra egg?"
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and then it says creatures converging on Skull Island, in like the little like text things from like news clippings, and then the post credit sequence is Charles Dance's group. showing up to the island that they went to where Rodan is from, and somebody has one of Ghidorah's heads, and he's like, we'll take it.
So let's do our speculation for Godzilla v. King Kong. What I'm going to speculate is it's going to essentially be a Batman v. Superman style fight, where at the beginning you have a Godzilla King Kong battle, but then they take, because there was a mechanized,
like halfway through.
Yeah, there was a mechanized Ghidorah at some point in like the Toho films. I remember having the toy of it. And they'll probably will have some type of either one bring him back because it can regenerate, or make some type of mechanized version that they will have to fight together. I'm assuming that's
well. I mean, and theoretically,
go.
though, so the eco-terrorist group kind of got what they wanted. The Titans are released, and it's bringing back natural order to Earth and improving the environment.
So originally, I thought, maybe King Kong, Godzilla are going to fight. Maybe they'll team up and fight somebody. Well, the post credits for this talks about how they're all converging on the island. I think it's going to be a team up movie where it's one set of monsters backs King Kong, one set of monsters backs Godzilla. So it's going to be like an Avengers Civil War thing where they all fight, which could be very cool because they're all on the island. There's no people to get killed. Like, it's hard to build stakes in that way unless we are really just going to get a lot of monster fighting, and then maybe
and I think
maybe they all get together to fight whatever.
I think at some point there will be Godzilla and King, because I was kind of expecting at some point Kong to show up on screen, and they never,
because they referenced it, and they showed Kong Island, and they showed Skull Island, and I think they even mentioned Kong, and just he never shows up because they're saving it for the sequel. But I mean, and two, like, I do think
I'm so happy that at least is happening. Even if they fail after that, at least we get Godzilla versus Kong.
I do think that I think that seeing Godzilla fight King Kong could be a more engaging battle than Ghidorah, because a three-headed dragon with no arms, there's only so much they can do.
Yeah, Kong does stuff like picks up trees. Like, he's definitely more of a character.
And you got more characterization from him.
They could beef up the characterization in Godzilla for sure. They absolutely can. Well, they need to.
They're just so much more you're just so much more familiar with those two characters.
Well, and you showed, like, in this movie, you get to see Godzilla's eyes more clearly and closely. And
I mean, they made Godzilla more like of a, kind of like with Jurassic Park, where they gave some of these animals
so Vera Farmiga's character didn't really get any redemption, because essentially they unleashed their plan, because she worked with the eco-terrorist to release.
I think she hired them almost.
She planned with them to release all the Titans. Initially, their plan was to release them one by one, but once they released Ghidorah, then all of them started waking up.
Because he woke
and they did not realize that Ghidorah, because they called it Monster Zero initially. They didn't realize that Monster Zero or Ghidorah was what it was. They thought it was just another one of the Titans that would bring balance to the Earth. They didn't realize that Ghidorah was evil, not from this planet, and wanted to destroy everything. So they didn't intend necessarily for that to happen.
Yes, it was full destruction, not just humans.
So then Vera Farmiga is like, okay, well, I need to go and help use the orca thing to stop Ghidorah from destroying the planet, and Charles Dance's group is like, no, it's in motion. We'll just let this happen.
Yeah.
So I guess the only conflict there is they want Ghidorah back to even take things further and eradicate humanity completely, which is why they would want to find his head and then I guess make a Mecha Ghidorah at some point.
I'm assuming that's what it's going to be, because I don't know where else they could go.
Because it also talks about how everybody wants DNA from the Titans to use for medicine or food or whatever. Because if you can take that DNA and clone it and make a huge friggin' food source, I'm not sure the economics of that and how that actually works. But yeah, but then the human story, Kyle Chandler's character does get to save his daughter and take her away at the end. And Vera Farmiga's character dies.
And I think they should be done with them in the next one. You know what I mean? And I think the plant. He is in the next one.
He is going to be, because I went and looked up
because they said there was only a few.
Yeah, because I went and looked up, and it shows him that I don't know how large a role he's going to have, but in the 2020 one, it does list him as the same character.
The only thing I can say is, like, hey, if he redevelops the orca, you know what I mean? That's the only thing really, because sometimes they do these franchises and they have a reason for bringing back the character. You know what I mean?
Godzilla
like
versus Kong. The cast list for it shows Millie Bobby Brown, Alexander Skarsgård, Isaac Gonzalez, Kyle Chandler, Zia Zhang, Lance Reddick, Rebecca Hall, Jessica Henwick, Denai Guerrera. Trying to see that. Who else? Big people. Yeah, so I think
The one thing that sucks about Kong is they set it in the Vietnam era, so you can't bring Brie Larson or Hiddleston into
No, I mean, like, here's the thing. The new X-Men movies, they just have, what's his name? They have Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy playing the same characters for 30 years.
Yeah. The only way you can get around that is, like, you know, because they're mutants, maybe they age slower.
No, since they're on Kong Island, they're introduced to different, like, radiation that causes them to age more slowly.
But just because you did that, like, they just kind of lose those characters.
Could play their daughters.
Yeah, really. They could. Yeah, go.
It's like mom and dad hooked up, and we look exactly like them. But, yeah, so I think we discussed all the major plot points.
I'm happy that we got this movie, that it exists. You know, I will be one I want to just turn on sometimes and let it play. You know, I'm not going to sit there and pay close attention to it because I don't need to. But yeah, it looks cool visually. It's pretty awesome.
I got one huge complaint though.
Yeah,
when you play Godzilla at the end of the movie, the bluish or cult version, and you get it's like
why a new version?
But why not? Just you already.
I like that version though.
But I'm saying, like, to me, like, when you hear that, it's like, if you're going to play Godzilla, just fork the money up because you already spent a lot of money.
Yeah, but I like the version they made for it.
Yeah, but
sometimes I don't like sometimes when movies do that, I'm like, But this I actually was okay with. I kind of like that.
But I just would like to at least, you know, at some point in this movie, it would have been funny just to have had that on in the radio, or it would have been ultra meta, but still.
Well, they could do it. They could do it in King Kong versus Godzilla only because now Godzilla is quote unquote, you know, a savior like twice or whatever. You know, they could put it in the world that somebody has made a fan song. Just like the Spider-Man, in the subway.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just like, what was it? Pet Sematary recently, they did the cover of the Ramones.
And that
one was not good.
No, I had a huge... Yeah, just get the Ramones version. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, no, Godzilla. Now do we have to pay royalties or something?
Nope.
So if you're enjoying the podcast, you can give us a review on iTunes or whatever podcast app you're using that helps other people find the podcast. You can find everything we're doing at housebythevideostore.com. Find links to all of our social media accounts to Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. And if you want to find us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Instagram at @TheWilliamCaps.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at CapsDerek.
I'm on Twitter at BlevensSean.
And that'll wrap up this episode of the House by VSR podcast. Thanks for listening.
House by the Video.